She asked for a glass of water. The mafia boss gave her a key to his house and a gun she'd never use. The last plate hit the bus tray with a dull, heavy clatter. It was the sound of my life, dull, heavy, and repetitive. I untied the knot on my stained white apron, the cheap cotton stiff with grease and dried coffee. My feet ached, a deep throb that had started in my arches and now lived permanently in my heels. Outside the diner, the neon open sign buzzed, casting a sick pink glow over the empty counter I had just wiped down for the third time. It was past 11 o'clock at night. Another double shift finished. Another $83 in crumpled ones and fives stuffed into the pocket of my jeans. "Night, Nina," my boss, Sal, grunted from the grill, not looking up from his paper. "Good night, Sal." My voice was a rasp. I had not used it for much more than more coffee, or whole wheat or white, in 12 hours. I pushed through the swinging door, the bell above it giving a tired jingle, and stepped out into the Costello Bay night. The air was cool, carrying the sharp, metallic tang of the ocean 3 blocks over. But it was not clean. It was mixed with car exhaust and the smell of the dumpsters behind the diner. My shoulders hunched automatically, a defense I had learned long before the weather turned cold. I pulled my thin jacket tighter. The walk home was only 10 blocks, but it felt like a marathon across enemy territory. He was out. Mason. The word itself was a stone in my stomach. He'd been released 2 days ago. I had not seen him. Not yet. But I felt his presence. It was in the way the bartender at the dive bar next to my apartment had stopped making eye contact with me. It was in the sudden silence from the neighbors who used to nod hello. They knew he was back. They knew to stay away. My usual route took me down the main boulevard, under the weak orange streetlights, past storefronts that were dark and shuttered. But tonight, I could not. It was too open, too exposed. A block from the diner, I saw it, his truck, the battered red Ford with one taillight held on by silver tape. It was parked across the street, idling, waiting. My breath caught. My heart did not pound. It just stopped. A cold, liquid dread washed through me, making my legs weak. He was not supposed to be here. He was supposed to be at the bar, or passed out. He was hunting. I stepped back, melting into the shadow of a boarded-up shoe store. I could not go forward. I could not go back to the diner. I would not bring this to Sal. The alley. It was my only choice. A narrow gap between a laundromat and a restaurant I had never really noticed before. It was a shortcut I avoided. A dark, jagged line smelling of urine and old vegetables. Tonight, it was a sanctuary. I slipped into the darkness, my sneakers silent on the cracked pavement. I pressed my back against the cold brick, my breath held tight in my chest. I heard the truck's engine rev, a low growl. He was moving, cruising, looking for me. I pushed deeper into the alley, moving fast. My foot caught on a loose paving stone, and I pitched forward, catching myself on my hands and one knee. A sharp, stinging pain shot up my arm. I felt the skin tear at my elbow, the grit and gravel embedding itself in my palm. "Stupid, stupid," I hissed, scrambling to my feet. I stumbled on, my ankle twisting, but I ignored the pain. The alley opened up behind the buildings. I was halfway through, hidden. I leaned against a wall, my chest burning. And that is when the thirst hit me. It was not just a dryness. It was a desperate, choking need. My run-in, the panic, the adrenaline, it had sucked every drop of moisture from my body. My tongue felt thick, my throat like sandpaper. I looked around, frantic. The alley was a dead end of brick and dumpsters. Except for one door. It was not the rusted metal fire exit of the laundromat. This was different. It was solid oak, dark and clean, with a small, polished brass knocker. A single, warm yellow light burned above it. It was the back of the restaurant, the one I had never seen from the front. It looked private, expensive. I stared at the door. They would turn me away. They would call the police. And the police. The police were just Mason's drinking buddies in different uniforms. But I was so thirsty. My head was starting to spin. The scrape on my elbow was dripping, a slow, warm trail of blood down my forearm. I took a breath and knocked. It was a weak sound, just my knuckles tapping the wood. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. "Please," I whispered, though no one could hear me. I heard the heavy sound of a deadbolt sliding back. The door opened a crack, and a wall of a man filled the gap. He was huge, wearing a black suit that looked tight over his shoulders. His face was flat, his eyes empty. "We're closed," he said. His voice was like gravel. "I know, I'm sorry." My voice was trembling, betraying me. I need a glass of water, please. I just need some water." He stared at me. His gaze dropped to the blood on my arm, then back to my face. I could see the decision in his eyes. He was going to slam the door. "I do not have any money," I added quickly, stupidly. Please." He started to close the door. "Go home." "Let her in, Antonio." The voice came from behind the giant. It was not loud, but it cut through the night air like a blade. It was quiet, calm, and heavy with absolute authority. The giant, Antonio, froze. He looked surprised, even a little scared. He opened the door wider, stepping aside. A man stood in the hallway. The light from inside framed him, turning him into a silhouette of dark, expensive fabric. He stepped forward, into the yellow glow of the porch light. He was not as big as his guard, but his presence filled the alley. He was maybe in his mid-30s, with dark hair slicked back, revealing a face that looked like it had been carved from marble. He was devastatingly handsome, but it was a cold, severe beauty. His eyes were the darkest I had ever seen, and they saw everything. He wore a black suit, perfectly tailored, but his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, no tie. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. His gaze flickered over my diner uniform, the scrape on my arm, the old faded bruise on my jawline that my makeup had not quite hidden. He saw the way I was trembling. I wanted to run. This was a mistake. This man was more dangerous than the alley. He was more dangerous than Mason, but I was trapped by his stillness. "Water," I whispered, feeling like an idiot. "I just needed water." He did not speak. He just watched me for another second, then turned and walked back into the restaurant. Antonio, the guard, stayed in the doorway, blocking my path. I waited. I could hear the faint sound of clinking glasses, the murmur of a single conversation from somewhere deep inside. A moment later, the man returned. He was holding a heavy crystal glass, beaded with condensation. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. He held it out to me. My hand shook as I took it. Our fingers did not touch. I drank it all. The water so cold it hurt my teeth. I drank it down in 3 long, desperate swallows, the water washing the dust and fear from my throat. I held the empty glass, my breathing starting to even out. "Thank you," I said, my voice still shaky. I held the glass out for him to take. He ignored it. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his trousers and pulled out 2 objects. He held them in his open palm. One was a key. It was silver, heavy, and old-fashioned. An address, just a street name and a number, was etched into the metal. The other was a gun. It was small, compact, and black. It was not a revolver. It was flat, modern, and utterly terrifying. I stared at his hand. My mind went blank. This made no sense. I do not understand," I said. He still had not spoken a word to me. His dark eyes met mine. I was scared. I was exhausted and hurt, but I was also angry. Angry at Mason, at the world, at my own weakness. I met his gaze and did not look away. I was timid, but I would not be broken. I saw something flicker in his expression, a spark of, not interest, recognition. He placed the key and the gun in my hand, on top of the empty glass. His fingers were warm, his touch surprisingly gentle as he closed my own fingers around the objects. The metal was cold against my palm. "I cannot take that," I said, my voice rising in panic. "I do not want this. I just wanted water." I tried to push them back at him. He put his hand over mine, stopping me. His palm was calloused. "Luca Romano," he said. His voice was a low rumble, soft. It was the first time he had spoken directly to me. He was introducing himself. The name meant nothing to me. "I cannot," I insisted. Shaking my head, the gun felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "If he comes again," Luca Romano said, his voice calm, "go to the address on the key." My blood ran cold. He did not ask who he was. He did not ask why I was bleeding or why I was in his alley. He did not ask what had happened. He just knew. How did you—" "Go home," he said. It was not a request. He stepped back into the doorway. Antonio moved to close the door. "Wait," I said, desperate. "What am I supposed to do with this?" I held up the gun. Luca Romano looked at me, his face half in shadow. "You will not need to use it. Not if I am alive." The door closed. The deadbolt slid home. I stood in the alley alone. The silence rushed back in, broken only by the distant wail of a siren. I was holding an empty glass, a key to an unknown door, and a handgun. My walk home was a nightmare. Every shadow was a monster. Every passing car was him. The key was a cold, hard line in my fist. The gun was a terrifying, heavy weight in my jacket pocket, bumping against my hip with every step. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a rundown building that always smelled like damp plaster and boiled cabbage. I fumbled with my own key, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the lock to turn. I slammed the door shut, locking the deadbolt, and jammed my only kitchen chair under the doorknob. It would not stop him. Not really, but it might slow him down. I slid down the door, my back pressed against the wood, and finally let out the breath I had been holding. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the street, filtering through the dirty windows. I did not turn on a lamp. I sat on the floor, my mind racing. I pulled the items from my pocket, the key, the gun. I laid them on the scarred linoleum floor. The key was for an address in the Cliffs, the wealthiest part of Castello Bay, a place I had only ever seen from the bus window. The gun. I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. I did not know how to use it. I did not even know if it was loaded. The very idea of it made me sick. I crept to my bed and sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress. I put the gun on the nightstand, next to a cracked water glass and a romance novel I had checked out from the library. The 2 objects looked obscene together. I did not sleep. I could not. I just sat, staring at the gun, my body vibrating with leftover adrenaline and a new, strange fear. Who was Luca Romano, and how did he know about Mason? My mind drifted, pulling me back into memories I fought to keep buried. The first time Mason had hit me, it had been a surprise, a sharp, stinging slap that left my ears ringing. He cried afterward. He had sworn he would never do it again, and he was just stressed. His boss was riding him. He loved me. I had believed him. Then came the shoves, the way his fingers would dig into my arm, leaving marks shaped like his fingerprints. The night he had thrown a plate at my head, it missed, shattering against the wall, but the message was clear. I was his. My fear was his. I thought about calling the police. I had once. 2 officers had shown up, their faces bored. Mason was sitting on the couch, charming, apologetic. "We just had a fight, officers. You know how it is. She gets emotional." They had looked at me, at my split lip. "Ma'am, it is just a domestic dispute," one of them said, sighing. "Unless you want to press charges, you are just wasting our time. And even if you do, he will be out in an hour." I saw one of them clap Mason on the shoulder as they left. I never called them again. I had looked into the shelters. I spent one night in one, a clean cot in a room with 5 other women, all of us hollow-eyed and silent. They had rules, curfews, group therapy sessions where we had to talk about our trauma. I felt like a specimen in a jar. I left the next morning. I would rather be scared in my own space than trapped in theirs. So I stayed. I learned to be quiet. I learned to make myself small. I learned to read the signs, the smell of whiskey on his breath, the tension in his shoulders. I learned to disappear. until I finally saved enough tip money to get this apartment, and I had left while he was at work. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of peace. And now he was back. A sound from the hallway jolted me back to the present. My head snapped toward the door. Scratching. A metallic scratching at the lock. Nina? His voice, slurred, angry. Nina, you little witch. I know you're in there. Open the door. My heart stopped. No, no, no. The scratching stopped, replaced by a heavy thud. He was throwing his shoulder against the door. The wood groaned. Open the door, Nina. I just want to talk. Another thud. The chair I had wedged under the knob scraped against the floor. I was paralyzed. I could not breathe. This was it. It was going to kill me. The door jamb splintered. The wood around the deadbolt cracked. My eyes fell on the nightstand, the key, the gun. I grabbed them. I did not think my body moved on its own. Another crash. The door flew open, the chair skittering away. Mason filled the doorway, and he was bigger than I remembered. His eyes were bloodshot, his face red with rage and alcohol. There you are, he sneered. Think you can hide from me? Who were you with? He lunged for me. I did not scream. I did not fight. I ran. I scrambled to the window, the one that led to the rusted fire escape. I fumbled with the latch, my fingers numb and useless. The gun was in my right hand, the key in my left. He grabbed the back of my shirt, yanking me. I fell backward, hitting the floor. He was on top of me, his weight crushing, the smell of stale beer washing over me. You are not leaving me again, he roared, his face inches from mine. I shoved the gun, the hard metal of it, into his throat. I did not pull the trigger. I just shoved. He choked, surprised. His grip loosened. It was all I needed. I wriggled out from under him, scrambled to the window, and threw it open. I tumbled out into the metal platform, the cold air hitting my face. Get back here, he screamed from inside. I did not look back. I ran down the fire escape, my feet slamming against the metal rungs. I hit the alley pavement and did not stop. I ran, my lungs on fire. The gun still gripped in my hand. I ran for blocks, turning corners randomly, blind with panic. I finally collapsed against a wall, gasping for breath. Miles from my apartment, I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. The key, the address. I still had my tip money in my jeans. I stumbled to the main road, flagged down a taxi. The driver looked at me, at my wild eyes and scraped arm, but I just shoved a $20 bill at him and gave him the address. The ride to the cliffs was a blur. I kept the gun hidden in my lap, my hand shaking over it. The cab dropped me a block away. As I had asked, I walked up the dark, silent street. The houses here were not houses. They were compounds, hidden behind high stone walls and iron gates. I found the number. A massive black iron gate, at least 10 feet high, blocked the driveway. It was set into a stone wall that was even higher. There was no one in sight, no guard booth, just a small, discreet panel next to the gate. I looked at the key in my hand. It was not a car key. It was not a house key, but it matched a small, odd-shaped lock on the panel. My hands were trembling. This was insane. I was trespassing. I was going to be arrested. But I could not go back. Mason was at my apartment. I pushed the key into the lock. It turned. With a silent, electric hum, the massive iron gates began to glide open. I stepped through. The gates slid shut behind me, closing with a heavy, final thud. I was in a long driveway, paved with dark stones, wound up a hill through a forest of cypress trees. It was quiet. The only sound was the crunch of my own sneakers on the gravel. The house was invisible from the street. I walked for what felt like 5 minutes, until the trees cleared. The house was not a house. It was a fortress of dark stone and glass, built into the side of the cliff, overlooking the black, churning ocean. It was all angles, shadows, and light. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying. And he was waiting. The front door, a massive slab of dark wood, was open. Luca Romano stood in the entryway, bathed in the warm light from inside. He was dressed as I had seen him before, but this time in a simple black t-shirt and dark pants. He was not surprised. He looked like he had been expecting me. I stopped 10 feet away from him, on the stone porch. I was still holding the gun. My hand was white-knuckled around the grip. I could not find my voice. I just looked at him, my body shaking with the last tremors of adrenaline. "He came," Luca said. It was not a question. I managed a single, jerky nod, my eyes filled with tears. Hot and sudden, I would not cry. I would not. He stepped forward, closing the distance between us. He moved with a silence that was unnatural for a man his size. He stopped right in front of me. He was taller than I had realized. He looked at the gun in my hand, then at my face. Slowly, gently, he put his hand over mine. He did not grab. He just covered my hand. His skin was warm. He carefully, deliberately, uncurled my fingers from the weapon. He took the gun from me. The relief was so sudden, so absolute, I nearly buckled. He put a hand on my arm, steadying me. The touch was firm, impersonal, yet it grounded me. "You are safe here," he said. His voice was the same as it had been in the alley. Calm, certain. He turned. "Antonio!" The giant guard appeared from the hallway. "Show Miss..." He paused. He did not know my name. "Nina," I whispered. "Show Miss Nina to the south guest wing. Get her anything she needs." "Yes, boss." Antonio gestured for me to follow. I hesitated. Luca turned back to me. "No one will find you," he said. "You can leave whenever you want. We ask nothing in return." He was about to turn away, but I stopped him. "Why?" My voice was a croak. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at me, his dark eyes searching my face. I felt exposed, stripped bare. He saw the scrape on my arm, the terror that I could not hide, the exhaustion that went bone deep. My eyes drifted. I saw, just under the short sleeve of his t-shirt, a scar. It was not a thin white line like the one at his collar. This one was jagged, puckered, and angry-looking, a burn, or something worse. My gaze flickered to his wrist, another scar, a pale half-moon shape near his watch. He was not some untouched king in a castle. He was a man marked by violence. His gaze dropped. He was not looking at my face. He was looking at my hands. They were clenched at my sides, but they would not stop trembling. We stood there for a long moment, the silence of the massive house surrounding us. It was not a romantic moment. It was a moment of stark, brutal recognition. He saw my fear. I saw his pain. The air between us was charged, heavy with things I could not possibly understand. He gave a single, sharp nod, as if I had answered a question he had not asked. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing down a dark hallway, leaving me alone with his guard. Antonio led me to a room that was bigger than my entire apartment. It had a bed with a cloud-like duvet, a bathroom made of marble, and a wall of glass that looked out over the endless, dark ocean. Clean clothes were already laid out on the bed, a pair of soft gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt. Simple, new. "The door locks," Antonio said from the hallway. "If you need anything, there is an intercom. The boss said you are not to be disturbed." He closed the door. I stood in the center of the room. I walked to the door and touched the lock. It was a heavy, solid deadbolt. I listened to Antonio's footsteps fade away. I turned the lock, securing it. Then, for the first time in what felt like my entire life, I reached out and unlocked it. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the shower until the water was scalding hot, and scrubbed the grime of the alley and the memory of Mason's hands off my skin. I washed until I was raw. I put on clean clothes. They were soft, and they smelled like nothing. I climbed into the bed. The sheets were cool and smooth. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant, muffled sound of the ocean waves crashing against the cliffs. I should have been terrified. I was in a stranger's house, a dangerous man's house. But as the exhaustion finally pulled me under, the last thought I had was that, for the first time in my life, the door was unlocked, and I was not afraid. The first thing I registered was the silence. It was not the thin, shallow silence of my apartment, where I lay awake listening for footsteps in the hall or the creak of the fire escape. This was a deep, heavy, expensive silence. The only sound was the distant, rhythmic sigh of the ocean, a sound so constant it was almost part of the quiet. I opened my eyes. Sunlight, clean and white, was pouring through a wall of glass. For a second, I had no idea where I was. Then it all came back in a suffocating rush. The diner, Mason's truck, the alley, the gun, the key, the panic, the flight, Luca Romano. I was in his house, in a bed that felt like a cloud, under sheets so soft they felt like water against my skin. I was wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants that were not mine. I sat up. My body ached from the fall and the run, but the crushing terror was gone, replaced by a dull, hollow exhaustion. The room was vast and empty, minimalist, a bed, a dresser, a single chair, all dark wood and white linens, and that window, overlooking the cliffs and the bright blue water. I was alone. I had locked the door last night, but I had unlocked it again. A small, stupid test. No one had entered. On the dresser, a tray sat waiting. It held a silver coffee pot, a single cup, a plate of fruit, and a glass of orange juice. Next to it was a small, thick piece of cardstock folded in half. My name, Nina, was written on the front in strong black ink. I opened it. The handwriting inside was the same. It was not a note. It was a sentence. You are safe. For now. For now. It was not a promise of forever. It was a statement of fact. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in years. I drank the coffee. It was hot and strong. I ate the fruit. I showered in the marble bathroom. The water pressure so high it almost hurt, and it felt like it was stripping away the last 3 years of my life. I washed my hair with shampoo that smelled like sandalwood and herbs. When I was done, I put the borrowed clothes back on. I felt like a stray cat brought inside, cleaned up but still fundamentally wild, ready to bolt. I had to leave. I could not stay. This was a gilded cage, but it was still a cage. I had traded one dangerous man for another, even if this one had, so far, been gentle. I opened my bedroom door. The hallway was silent, a long stretch of polished stone and dark wood. Sunlight streamed in from high, narrow windows, illuminating particles of dust dancing in the air. I walked. My bare feet were silent on the cold floor. The house was a fortress, but it was not cold, not really. It was filled with a strange, quiet life. There were plants everywhere, deep green, leafy things in huge ceramic pots, orchids with delicate, spotted blossoms dripped from hanging baskets. Someone was caring for these. The art on the walls was not the abstract spatters of color I expected. They were old paintings, portraits of stern-looking men and somber women, landscapes of dark, stormy Italian coasts. They were beautiful, but they were heavy with history. I found a library, 2 stories of books from floor to ceiling, with a rolling ladder. The room smelled of old paper and leather. I saw a desk in the corner. It was massive, made of a dark, reddish wood. It was clear. No papers, no computer, just a single old-fashioned black telephone. I saw no one, no staff, no Antonio. But I knew they were here. I felt them. The security was invisible, but absolute. I noticed the small, dark domes of cameras tucked into the corners of the ceilings. I saw the faint, hair-thin lines of sensors near the windows. This was a place built to keep the world out and to keep its occupants in. I found my way to a large living area. One entire wall was glass, looking out over a stone terrace and the ocean. A woman was there, her back to me. She was older, dressed in a simple black dress and apron, polishing a silver vase. She turned, startled. She had kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a tight bun. "Signorina," she said, her voice soft, with a heavy Italian accent, "you are awake." Yes, I'm sorry, I was just..." "You're hungry? I can make you lunch." "No, thank you. I should go." I pointed vaguely toward the front of the house. "I need to leave." The woman's smile was sad. "The gates are locked, Signorina, Mr. Romano gave orders. No one in, no one out, for your safety." My blood went cold. "I'm a prisoner?" "You are a guest," she said gently, as if that explained everything. "He will be back tonight. He asked that you join him for dinner. 7 o'clock. I will find you." She turned back to her polishing. I was dismissed. I was a prisoner, a well-fed prisoner in soft clothes, but the key I had used to get in would not get me out. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. I went back to my room and tried to sleep, but I could not. I looked out the window. I watched a hawk ride the air currents over the cliffs. I was that hawk, trapped in a pocket of air, unable to land, unable to fly away. What was he doing? Luca, he had taken my gun. He had locked me in. What was he doing about Mason? My mind conjured images of violence, men in suits, dark cars, a body being dumped. I pushed the thoughts away, disgusted with myself, but I was not disgusted by the idea. I was just numb. 7 o'clock came. The housekeeper, who I learned was named Sophia, appeared at my door with a simple, dark blue dress. It was soft, made of cashmere. It fit perfectly. How did he know my size? Sophia led me to a smaller dining room. Not the grand hall I had expected. This one had a fireplace, a round table set for two, and a view of the darkening ocean. Luca was already there, standing by the fire. He was dressed as he had been last night, in black trousers and a simple, dark t-shirt that stretched across his shoulders. He looked less like a businessman and more like a soldier. He turned when I entered. His dark eyes swept over me, from my bare feet to my face. He noted the dress, his expression unreadable. "Nina," he said. It was a statement. "You locked me in." I said, my voice was stronger than I expected. "I am keeping you safe." He motioned to the table. "Please, sit." I did not move. "For how long? Am I your prisoner?" "You are my guest." He said the word just as Sophia had, "and you are here until I have dealt with the man who was hunting you." "Dealt with him?" "Sit," he said again. This time, it was not a request. I sat. The chair was heavy, upholstered in velvet. He sat across from me. Sophia appeared, placed salads in front of us, and vanished. We were alone. "My men looked into Mason Cole," Luca said, picking up his fork. "He did not eat. He has 2 prior arrests for assault, 1 for battery, both against women, both times. The charges were dropped." I stared at my plate. He knows people. The cops. He knows 2 patrolmen and a bartender who pays them for information. He is not important. He is to me. "No," Luca said. His voice was quiet, but it cut. "He is a rat, and this is my house. Rats are not allowed." I looked up. His eyes were cold, not with anger, but with a kind of flat certainty. It was the look of a man who dealt in absolutes. "What are you going to do?" I whispered. "That is not your concern." He paused, then asked, "Do you want to press charges? The legal way? I can make it happen. I can ensure the charges stick. He would go to prison for a long time." I thought about it. The police stations, the courtrooms, the questions, having to tell my story, over and over, to men in suits who would look at me with pity or suspicion, having to face Mason. "No," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "No?" "I don't want revenge," I said, meeting his gaze. "I don't want to see him in court. I don't want to talk about it. I want quiet. I just want to be left alone." My answer seemed to surprise him. He studied me, his gaze intense. He set his fork down. "Quiet," he repeated. He said the word like it was a foreign concept. "Quiet is the most expensive thing in the world. Nina." "I know." He leaned back in his chair. "I never wanted this." I blinked. "This? This?" He gestured vaguely. At the room, the house, the unseen guards, the family business. I was supposed to be an architect. I studied in Italy. I wanted to build things. Cathedrals, museums. What happened? My father died. My older brother died. It fell to me. and when something is yours. He leaned forward, his eyes locking on mine. You protect it. You protect what is yours. The implication hung in the air. I was in his house. I was his, not in the way Mason had meant, not as a possession, but as a responsibility. Why me? I asked, my voice barely audible. You don't know me. I was just a woman in an alley. He did not answer. He just watched me. The silence stretched, and in it, I felt that safety again. He was not judging me. He was not prying. He was just listening. Why did you stay with him? He asked. His voice was soft, genuinely curious. The shame washed over me, hot and fast. I looked down at my hands. You think I'm stupid. I think you were trapped. I took a shaky breath. It's not simple. At first, it was good. He was charming, he made me feel safe. And by the time it got bad, I had no one. He told me my friends were stupid. He told me my sister was a witch. He told me I was lucky to have him, that no one else would ever want me. And I believed him. I stopped, my throat tight. I tried to leave. I went to a shelter. I felt like a statistic. I felt like a failure. And the police, they're his friends. When you have no money and no power, the world, it's not on your side. So I made myself small. I stayed quiet. I waited until I could finally get away. I looked up, expecting to see pity or disgust. Luca's face was rigid. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the table. He was not looking at me with pity. He was looking at something far away, and his eyes were filled with a pure, cold rage. It was not directed at me. It was for me. Men who do that, he said, his voice a low growl, are not men. They are failures. They are a sickness, and sickness must be cut out. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping back. You are safe here. Eat. He walked out of the room, leaving me alone with his anger and the best meal I had ever had. I did not see him for 2 days. I lived in the quiet, empty house. I read books from the library. I walked on the terrace, breathing the cold, salt air. Sophia brought me meals. I was a ghost in a palace. I was drawn to him. I was terrified of him. He was a man who spoke of cutting out sickness. He was a man who lived in a fortress. He was a man with scars on his arms and anger in his eyes. But he was also the man who had given me water. He was the man who had listened to my shame and had not judged me. He was the man who, I was beginning to realize, understood what it meant to be trapped. On the third night, the storm came. I had never been in a storm on the ocean. It was a living thing. The wind screamed, a high-pitched tearing sound. Rain hammered against the glass of my room, so hard it sounded like handfuls of rocks. And the thunder, it was not a rumble. It was a crack. A violent explosion that shook the house to its foundations. I was in bed, reading, when the first great crash of thunder hit. The sound was too much like Mason's fist splintering my apartment door. My heart seized. I gasped, the book falling from my hands. I was not in the guest room. I was back in my apartment. I could smell the stale beer on his breath. I could feel his weight. No, I whispered, pulling my knees to my chest. Another crack of thunder. I cried out, scrambling off the bed, backing into the corner of the room. I covered my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. I could not breathe. My chest was too tight. The air was gone. Please, Mason, no. Please, I'm sorry. Please. I was hyperventilating, choking on my own fear. I did not hear the door open. I did not hear him enter. I only knew he was there when a hand touched my shoulder. I screamed. I flinched, curling into a tighter ball. Don't touch me. Nina. His voice, that low, calm rumble, it cut through the panic. Nina, it's Luca. I opened my eyes. He was crouching in front of me, his hands held up, palms open, showing me he was unarmed. The room was dark, lit only by a flash of lightning. It's the storm, he said softly. It's just the storm. You are not there. You are here. I can't breathe, I gasped, my chest heaving. Yes, you can. He did not move closer. He just stayed, a solid, grounding presence. Breathe with me. In. He took a slow, deep breath. Out. I tried. My breath came out as a sob. Again, he commanded, his voice gentle but firm. Breathe. You are safe. He's not here. I am here. Breathe. I focused on his voice. I matched his breathing. In, out, in, out. The roaring in my ears began to subside. The room swam back into focus. I was on the floor. In his house, I was safe. The trembling did not stop, but the panic receded, leaving me weak and humiliated. I'm sorry, I whispered, my face buried in my knees. I'm sorry. Do not apologize, he said. He sat on the floor, not next to me, but a few feet away, leaning his back against the bed. He was giving me space. He was just staying. We sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the howl of the wind and the lash of the rain. I'm so stupid, I finally said, my voice thick. No, he said. You are hurt. I uncurled slightly, looking at him. He was just a shadow in the dark. I feel like I'm still there, I whispered. I feel like I'll never get away. You will. How do you know? 'Cause you are here. The simplicity of it. I had run. I had used the key. I was here. I felt a new wave of trembling, but it was not fear. It was cold. I was still in my t-shirt. He noticed. He stood up, and for a second I tensed, but he just walked to the closet and pulled out a heavy blanket. He came back and draped it over my shoulders. His fingers brushed my neck. It was a light, accidental touch, but it sent a jolt through my entire body. It was not the clumsy, grasping touch of Mason. It was careful. I looked up at him, and he was still crouched in front of me. His face was close. I could see the lines at the corners of his eyes. I could see the scar on his collar. He was watching me. His gaze was so intense it felt like a physical touch. He was not just looking at me. He was seeing me. All the broken, ugly, scared parts. He was drawn to me. I could see it, and I was afraid, but I wanted. He lifted his hand very slowly, as if not to startle me. He traced the line of my jaw, his thumb brushing over the spot where Mason's ring had left a faded yellow bruise. He will never touch you again, he whispered. My breath hitched. He brushed the damp hair back from my face, his fingers rough but impossibly gentle. His hand cupped my cheek. He was so close. I could smell the storm on his skin, and that same scent of sandalwood and spice. He was going to kiss me. I knew he was. My eyes fluttered shut. I leaned into his touch, a small, involuntary movement. I wanted to feel something that was not fear. His breath was warm on my lips. I waited. The moment stretched, filled with the roar of the ocean and the beating of my own heart. He did not kiss me. I felt him inhale, a sharp, controlled breath, and then his hand was gone. I opened my eyes. He was standing up, his back to me. You're safe, Nina, he said, his voice rough. Lock the door. I will have Antonio stand outside. No, I said, my voice small. Don't go. He turned. His face was a mask of control, but his eyes were. He was fighting something. It is better if I do, he said, and he left. He closed the door softly behind him, leaving me alone with the blanket, the storm, and the ghost of a kiss. He had stopped. He could have taken. I was vulnerable. I was his, and he had walked away. I sat there for an extant hour, wrapped in the blanket, before I finally crawled back into bed. The storm still raged, but it did not scare me anymore. I was not afraid of Luca Romano. I was afraid of what I felt for him. The next morning, the world was washed clean. The storm had passed, leaving a bright, clear sky. I felt lighter, changed. I left my room, intending to find him. I needed to. I did not know what I needed. I just needed to see him. I went to the library, but he was not there. I went to the dining room. I went to the terrace. Finally, I went back to my wing of the house. I walked toward my room, but stopped. The door to the room next to mine was open, a room I had assumed was empty. Sophia was inside, folding clothes. My clothes! I stood in the doorway, my blood turning to ice. It was all there, my old, worn-out jeans, my 3 diner uniforms, my small box of photographs, the one with my mother in it, my scratched-up paperback novels, my entire pathetic life transferred from my broken apartment to this empty, perfect room. He had not just given me sanctuary. He had erased me from my old life. He had moved me in. He had done it without asking. I thought of Mason, of the way he would surprise me by throwing out clothes he did not like, on the way he had helped me by taking my phone so I could not talk to my sister. He's not like Mason, I had told myself. But I was standing in a room that proved he was just quieter, more efficient. I turned and ran. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to get out. I was a fool. I had traded one cage for another. I ran. My bare feet slapped against the cold stone of the hallway. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from that room, that shrine, my old life, boxed up and curated by him. It was a violation. It was the same thing Mason had done, just quieter, more efficient. He had not thrown my things away. He had stolen them. He had reached into my past, into my broken little apartment, and taken what was left of me. I shoved open a set of double doors and stumbled into the library, the 2-story room with the rolling ladder. My breath was coming in short, angry gasps. He was there. Luca stood at the massive desk, the black telephone receiver held to his ear. He was not speaking, just listening, his face a mask of cold concentration. He saw me. His eyes narrowed, but he did not end his call. He just held up one finger. Wait. Wait, I would not wait. You, I yelled, my voice cracking. You went to my apartment. He did not flinch. He spoke into the phone, his voice low and final. Handle it, no trace. He hung up the receiver, placing it perfectly back on its cradle. He gave me his full, calm attention. Yes, Mao, he said. You sent your men. You took my things, without asking me. You had no right. I was pacing. My hands clenched. I felt like a wild animal. Your landlord was evicting you, he said, his voice level. He was going to throw your belongings in the alley. I had them retrieved. You should have asked me. There was no time, and you would have said no. Of course I would have said no. They're my things. That was my life. The life you ran from, he asked. He still had not moved, had not raised his voice. That infuriated me. He was treating me like I was hysterical. Maybe I was. It was mine to leave, I shouted. You don't get to control me, Luca. You don't get to decide what's best for me. That's what he did. Mason, he controlled everything. What I wore, who I saw, and you just did the same thing. I was choking on the words, the tears finally coming, hot and angry. He moved then. He came around the desk, stopping a few feet from me. His face was not cold. It was tight, pained. Nina, he said, and his voice was rough. I am not him. You acted just like him. You decided for me. I am not letting him put his hands on you again. The words were a slap. They cut through my anger, straight to the raw, terrified thing underneath. I stopped pacing. I stared at him. What? He was there, Lucas said, his voice flat. When my men arrived to clear your apartment, Mason was there. He was tearing the place apart, looking for you. He had a knife. He told the landlord he was going to finish what he started. I stopped breathing. He had been there. He had been waiting. My men discouraged him, Lucas said. They took your things. He will not be back at that apartment, Nina. I am not letting him put his hands on you. I am not letting him breathe the same air as you. I am not letting him exist in your world. Is that control? I sank into one of the leather chairs, my legs giving out. I put my face in my hands. He was not controlling me. He was protecting me, the way a wolf protects its den, absolute, final, and without asking permission. I started to cry, not the angry tears from before. These were the tears I had held back for 3 years, the hopeless, broken sobs of a person who had been alone for so long. "I'm sorry," I whispered into my hands. I'm so tired." I felt him move, felt him crouch in front of me, just as he had during the storm, but I did not flinch. I let my hands fall. He was looking at me, his face undone, and the mask was gone. He looked lost. "No one," I whispered, the confession tearing out of me. "No one has ever done that. No one has ever stood up for me. When he hit me, I told my sister. She told me to leave. I told my boss. He told me to be careful. I told the police. They told me it was a domestic dispute. I didn't even protect myself." The last words were the most painful. I had just gotten small. I had just disappeared. "You did," he said, his voice thick. "What?" "You protected yourself. You survived him. You got out. You ran down a fire escape, and you came here. You saved yourself. Nina, I just opened the door." He reached out, his thumb brushing away a tear on my cheek, the same touch from the storm. But this time, I did not freeze. I leaned into it. "I'm so scared," I admitted, all the time. "I know." He was still crouching. I was still sitting. The air between us was electric. It was everything from the storm, everything from our first dinner, all of it rushing into this moment. I looked at his mouth. I had never, not once in my life, taken what I wanted. I had only ever taken what was given, or what was left over. I put my hand on his shoulder. The muscle was hard as rock. He went perfectly still. I leaned in. I kissed him. It was slow. It was careful. It was clumsy. My lips were chapped. His were firm, and he tasted like coffee and something dark and male. I just pressed my mouth to his. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of need. A kiss that said, "Please, be real." For 1 second, he did not respond. He was stone. And then, just as a small, quiet sigh escaped him, he pulled back. He stood up, turning away from me. "Nina, no." My heart shattered. Humiliation flooded me. He did not want me. I was the broken, pathetic girl from the diner. I had misread everything. I'm sorry," I stammered, scrambling to my feet. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't. I'll go." I turned to run. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, not hard, not like Mason. It was a grasp that was just absolute. He did not pull me. He just held me. "Stop," he said. I turned back. He was looking at me, his dark eyes turbulent, at war with himself. "I am not—" He struggled for the words. "You are vulnerable. You are in my house. I am not a good man, Nina, and I will not be another man who takes from you when you are scared." The logic of it hit me. He thought I was kissing him out of gratitude, out of fear. He thought he was taking advantage. I stepped closer to him until my body was almost touching his. I was still trembling, but not with fear, with something else, something new. I reached up, my hand shaking, and laid it flat against his chest. I felt his heart, a heavy, controlled thump under my palm. "I'm not scared of you, Luca." He closed his eyes. A pained breath hissed out of him. "You should be," he whispered. "No." I put my other hand on his face, my fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. He was rough, a day's worth of stubble scraping my skin. He did not move, but I felt every muscle in his body tighten, as if he was holding back a tidal wave. "I've been scared my whole life," I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. "I was scared of Mason. I'm scared of the dark. I'm scared of being alone. But I am not scared of you." I stood on my toes and kissed him again. This time it was not a question. This time I was not asking. I was telling you. For a long moment he remained rigid, and then, with a low groan that seemed torn from his soul, his hand came up and tangled in my hair. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against him so hard it knocked the breath from my lungs. He kissed me back. It was not gentle. It was not careful. It was a deluge. It was all the words he could not say, all the anger he felt for me, all the control he held so tightly. Finally breaking, his mouth was hungry, demanding, but it was not cruel. It was desperate. He kissed me like a man dying of thirst. I clung to him, my fingers digging into his shoulders. I was not a fragile thing. I was not a victim. I was his match. I met his hunger with my own, a lifetime of suppressed want and need rising to the surface. He broke the kiss, resting his forehead against mine, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Nina," he breathed, his voice broken. "It's okay," I whispered. "It's okay, I'm here." He looked at me, his eyes dark and dilated. He was asking a question. He was giving me one last chance to run. I answered by kissing him again, a soft, slow exploration. This was my choice. His hand on my jaw was so careful, his thumb stroking my cheekbone as his mouth moved over mine. His arm at my waist held me, pinned me to him, but it was a brace, not a cage. I felt safe, utterly, completely safe. He kissed my jaw, my neck, the sensitive spot behind my ear, his lips tracing a line of fire. I shivered, my head falling back, giving him access. My hands moved from his shoulders, exploring. I felt the hard, scarred planes of his back through the thin t-shirt. I felt the coiled power in him, and I felt how he was restraining it. For me. "Luca," I whispered. I did not know what else to say. He lifted me. It was effortless. He just scooped me into his arms. I wrapped my legs around his waist, my arms around his neck, and I buried my face in his shoulder. He smelled like sandalwood and spice and something that was just him. He carried me out of the library, down the long, silent hallway, past the room full of my past, and into his. His bedroom was like the rest of the house, vast, dark, and minimal, a huge bed, a wall of glass looking out at the ocean, and a fire, already burning low in a wide stone fireplace. He set me down on the thick rug in front of the fire. He did not let go of me. He just sank to his knees, bringing me with him. We knelt there, facing each other. The firelight flickered, painting his face in red and gold. "You are..." He shook his head, unable to find the words. He took my shaking hands in his. His were calloused, rough from things I could not imagine, but his touch was a prayer. He lifted my hand to his lips and kissed my palm, then my wrist. His eyes never left mine. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me no, and I will." "Don't stop," I breathed. He leaned in, and his mouth found mine again. This kiss was different. It was slow. It was a promise. It was about discovery. His hands moved from my wrists to my arms, pushing up the sleeves of the cashmere dress, his palms warm on my skin. He was mapping me, learning me. I fumbled with the hem of his t-shirt, my fingers clumsy. I needed to feel him. He helped me, pulling it over his head. I stopped. The firelight illuminated his torso. He was covered in scars, the one on his arm, the burn. But there were more. A thin, white line that cut across his ribs, a pucker near his shoulder that looked like an old bullet wound. This was a man who was made of violence and survival. My hand went to the largest scar, the one on his ribs. I traced it. He hissed, a sharp intake of breath, but he did not stop me. "Who did this?" I whispered. "It doesn't matter," he said, his voice rough. "It was a long time ago." "It matters to me." He captured my hand, kissing my fingers. "Let me..." He looked at me, his eyes full of a raw, painful longing. "Let me make you feel safe, Nina. Let me show you what it's like, just once." He was not asking to take it. He was asking to give. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He was so careful. His hands trembled as he found the zipper on the back of the dress. He lowered it slowly, inch by inch. He pushed the soft cashmere off my shoulders. I was wearing nothing underneath. He did not stare. He did not leer. His eyes, they were full of a kind of reverence. He looked at me like I was a masterpiece he was afraid to touch. "You are beautiful," he whispered. He kissed my shoulder. His lips were soft. He kissed the hollow of my throat. He kissed the center of my chest, right above my heart. Every touch was a question, not a demand. Every kiss was a balm, healing the old, invisible wounds. He laid me back on the rug, his body shielding me from the world. He was slow. He was gentle. He taught me that a man's touch could be a sanctuary, not a weapon. He whispered to me, not in English, but in soft, flowing Italian. I did not understand the words, but I understood the meaning. They were words of praise, words of comfort, words of devotion. And when he finally made me his, it was not a taking. It was a joining. It was a quiet, desperate, and undeniable click of two broken pieces locking into place. It was safety. It was longing. It was peace. Later, I lay awake, my head on his chest, my body tangled with his. The fire had burned down to embers. The room was quiet. He was asleep. I had never seen him so unguarded. His face, in sleep, was younger. The hard lines were gone. I listened to his heartbeat under my ear, steady, strong, slow. I did not know what this was. I did not know what to call it. I was a waitress in a mafia boss's bed. I was a runaway. I was a guest. I was a prisoner. But as I lay there, listening to the ocean and the breathing of the man beside me, I realized that for the first in my entire life, I was not afraid. I felt still, and I felt peaceful. A few days passed. A new rhythm established itself. I did not see Luca's quiet work. I did not see him in his office, on the black phone. I did not hear the cold, simple orders he gave to Antonio. I did not know that he was methodically, surgically, and quietly erasing Mason Cole from the world. He was having Mason's debts called in, his friends paid off or threatened, his new job eliminated. He was building a cage for him, far away from me, all without me ever knowing. All I knew was the quiet. I started helping Sophia in the gardens. The estate had a huge greenhouse and acres of flowers. I had always liked plants. My mother had. I dug in the dirt. I got soil under my fingernails. I pruned roses, my hands getting scratched by the thorns. It felt good. It felt real. I was taking care of something. I was making something grow. Sophia would bring me lemonade and watch me, a small, knowing smile on her face. She and I spoke in broken sentences, her Italian and my English, but we understood each other. Luca and I found our own dance. He was gone most of the day, on business, but he was always there for breakfast. We would sit at the small table in the kitchen, the sun streaming in. He would have his coffee, black, and read the Castello Bay Chronicle, a real paper newspaper. I would have tea and read a book from his library. Sometimes he would read a headline aloud, something absurd about the city council, and make a dry, cutting remark. I would laugh. One time I caught him watching me read. "What?" I asked. "You read fast," he said. "I don't have much else to do." A small, almost smile touched his lips. "We'll have to buy more books." They were small moments, tiny, normal moments that felt more intimate than anything I had ever known. We were two quiet people, living in a quiet house. But I was not a fool. The house was not quiet. It was a fortress. And he was not an architect. He was a king. One evening, I was looking for him. Sophia said he was in the West Wing, in his study. I went, but the room was empty. I walked back down a hall I had not used before. I passed a door, solid dark oak, just like all the others. But this one was different. I felt a cold draft coming from under it. I had never been a brave person, but Luca, he made me feel not brave, but curious. I tried the handle. It was unlocked. I pushed it open. The room was cold. It was lit by stark, white overhead lights. It smelled of steel and solvent. It was an armory. The walls were lined with weapons, not just handguns, rifles, shotguns, things I'd only seen in movies. They were racked, gleaming, meticulously clean. There was a workbench covered in tools and parts. A separate, glass-fronted cabinet held rows and rows of knives. This was not for hunting deer. This was for hunting men. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was who he was. This was the family business. This was the man who had held me so gently. This is the other side of me. His voice came from the doorway. I spun around. Luca was standing there, and he was not angry. He was not surprised. He was just watching me. His face was calm, but his eyes were guarded. He walked into the room, past me, and picked up a heavy, black rifle from the rack. He checked the action, his movements economical and practiced. "You never have to use the gun I gave you," he said, not looking at me. "You never even have to see this room. You can go back to the garden. You can read your books. You can pretend this does not exist." He put the rifle back. He turned to me. "But I will not lie to you, Nina. I will never lie to you. This is who I am. This is what I do. I protect what is mine, and I destroy what threatens it. This is the truth." I was shaking. My mind was screaming. This was death. This was violence. This was everything I had ever been afraid of. But he was honest. Mason had lied every day. He lied about where he was, about the money, about his love. He wrapped his violence in excuses and false promises. Luca just laid the truth at my feet, a cold, hard, dangerous truth. I looked at him, at the man who had held me through a panic attack, at the man who had pulled back from a kiss because he thought I was weak, at the man who had scars all over his body and honesty in his eyes. I was shaken. I was terrified of this room, but I was not afraid of him. I walked toward him, my steps small but steady. I stopped in front of him. I reached up and put my hand on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating that same steady rhythm. "I know who you are," I whispered. "I'm not pretending." He searched my face, looking for any sign of doubt, of fear. I gave him none. "I trust you," I said. And I realized, as the words came out, that it was the truest thing I had ever said. I trust you more than I trust anyone. A look of relief, so profound it was almost painful, passed over his face. He put his hand over mine, pressing it to his chest. He did not speak. He just closed his eyes, and in the cold, sterile room of death, he held my hand over his heart. The peace I had found was a fragile thing. It had been 3 weeks since I'd come to Luca's estate. 3 weeks of quiet mornings, afternoons spent in the garden with Sophia, and nights where I fell asleep in Luca's arms, listening to his steady breathing. I was healing. The tremors in my hands had mostly stopped. I no longer flinched at loud noises. But some mornings, I would wake up with a jolt, my heart pounding, the ghost of Mason's voice in my ear. Lately, that feeling had started to seep into my days. I was outside, kneeling in the rich, dark soil, planting lavender. The sun was warm on my back. The air smelled of salt and roses. It was a perfect afternoon, but I could not shake the feeling. I felt watched. I glanced up at the high stone walls that ringed the estate. I saw nothing, just the blue sky and the dark green tops of the cypress trees. But the feeling persisted. A prickle on the back of my neck, a sense of being observed. I told myself I was being paranoid. This was the safest place I had ever been. There were cameras. There were men I never saw. Antonio was a constant, silent presence near the front of the house. No one could get in. But the feeling was exactly as it had been in my old apartment, in those last days before Mason found me. the feeling of being hunted. I did not know that, miles away, in the city, Mason was hunting. He was desperate. His life had unraveled. His apartment was gone. His few friends had vanished, and his boss had fired him for reasons no one would explain. He was a rat in a closing trap, and he blamed me. He had scraped together his last few $100s and hired a man, a grimy bottom feeder with a long-lens camera who specialized in finding people who did not want to be found. The man was good. He was patient. He had watched the diner, followed Sal, and eventually, he had followed a black sedan making a delivery of wine to Luca's estate. He had sat in the hills for 2 days, his lens trained on the gates. And then he saw me. I did not know that, at that very moment, this man was not in the hills. He was in the back of a dark van, his camera in pieces at his feet. Antonio stood over him, his face impassive. "Who hired you?" Antonio's voice was a low rumble. The man, his lips split and bleeding, just whimpered. Antonio picked up the man's camera roll. He held up a photo. It was me, in the garden, my face clear. "Who hired you?" This time, the man talked. In Luca's study, the air was thick with cigar smoke. He stood at the window, looking out at the ocean, his back to the room. Antonio placed the photograph on the desk. Mason Cole. He hired a private investigator. We have the man. He will disappear. Luca did not turn. His shoulders were rigid. And the negatives? Luca's voice was cold. Destroyed. This was the only print. The man has not spoken to Cole since taking it. Cole does not know she is here. Not yet. Good. Make sure he never does. And Antonio? Boss? She does not know about this. Not one word. She is calm. I want her to stay that way. Understood. Antonio turned to leave. There is something else, a new voice said. I had only seen this man once or twice. His name was Enzo, and he was younger than Antonio, sharp, and always wore a perfectly tailored suit. He looked more like a banker than a bodyguard. He was Luca's lieutenant, his strategist. Enzo stepped forward, holding a tablet. The DeMarcos. Luca finally turned. His face was a mask. What about them? They are getting bold, Enzo said. They are running products north of their usual territory. But more than that, there are rumors. Luca, they are talking. Let them talk. They are talking about her, Enzo pressed, his gaze flickering to the photo of me on the desk. They say the new boss of the Romano family has gone soft, that he is hiding some waitress in his fortress. They see her as leverage. Luca, a civilian, a weakness. Luca walked to his desk. He picked up the photo of me. He stared at it for a long moment, his thumb brushing over the image of my face. Enzo pushed. She weakens you. She is a distraction. The family. They are nervous. You are taking risks for a girl no one knows. She is not a girl, Luca said, his voice dangerously quiet. He placed the photo face down on his desk. She is what I am fighting for. She is a liability, Enzo insisted. No. Luca looked up, and his eyes were full of a cold fire that silenced his lieutenant. She reminds me of what I was before all this blood. Before this. He guessed it at the room, the desk, the unseen empire. She is quiet. She is clean. She is the only thing in this house that is not mine by force. You will not speak of her as a liability again. You will speak of her as mine, and you will protect her as such. Enzo paled. He gave a sharp nod. Yes, boss, of course. Now, tell me about the DeMarcos. Tell me how we are going to make them regret learning my name. That night, he came to my room. I was reading, but I felt him at the door before he even knocked. I need you to come with me, he said. I looked up. Come with you where? To an event, a charity gala, at the art museum. My stomach dropped. Outside with people? You will be with me. You will be perfectly safe. He stepped into the room, his presence filling the space. I would not ask if it was not important. Important how? It is important that they see me. And it is important, he added, his voice softening, that they see me with you. He was not just taking me to a party. He was making a statement. This was his world, and he was inviting me in. Okay, I whispered. Yes, okay. A rare, small smile touched his lips. Good. Sophia will help you get ready. We leave at 8:00. Sophia arrived with a dress bag. Inside was a dress made of black liquid silk. It was simple, elegant, and terrifying. It had a low back and a neckline that was modest but hinted at everything. Signorina? Sophia breathed, her eyes wide. Bellissima. She helped me with my hair, pinning it up in a way that left soft tendrils to frame my face. She gave me makeup, not the thick concealer I used to hide bruises, but subtle shadows and a soft, dark red for my lips. When I looked in the mirror, I did not recognize myself. I was not Nina, the tired waitress. I was a woman who looked like she belonged in a house like this. I walked down the main staircase. My heels, also black, also new, clicked on the stone. Luca was waiting at the bottom, and he was not in his usual t-shirt. He was wearing a black, custom-tailored tuxedo. He looked like something out of an old, dangerous movie. He was adjusting his cufflink, but he froze when he saw me. His eyes swept over me, from my pinned-up hair, down the line of my neck, over the silk that draped my body, all the way to my shoes, and then back up. His gaze was so intense, so possessive. It felt like a physical touch. He did not say a word. He did not have to. I saw his throat work as he swallowed. When I reached the bottom step, he held out his arm. I slid my hand into the crook of his elbow. His muscle was tense. You are... He started, his voice rough. He stopped. You are... everything, Nina. A warmth bloomed in my chest, a confidence I had never felt before. You look pretty good yourself, boss, I whispered. His hand covered mine, squeezing it. Let's go. The gala was a sea of noise, diamonds and fake smiles. The museum was vast, all marble and glass. Hundreds of people were there, the wealthiest and most powerful in Castello Bay. I saw politicians, movie stars, and old money families. And I saw men like Luca. They were in corners, in small groups, unmistakable. They wore the same perfect tuxedos, but their eyes were different. They were not looking at the art. They were watching the room. They were watching each other. Luca's hand never left the small of my back. It was a constant, warm pressure that guided me, grounded me. That man, he murmured, his voice in my ear. The one in the blue suit, that is Councilman Davies. He's a snake. And him? I whispered, nodding at a sharp-faced man watching us. Ricardo DeMarco, he is a rat. The man, DeMarco, raised his glass to Luca. His smile was all teeth. Luca gave a stiff, short nod, then steered me away. I don't like this, I whispered. I feel like I'm on display. You are, he said simply, and so am I. That is the point. They need to see that the Romano family is stable, and they need to see you. A waiter, young and nervous, offered us champagne. Luca took one and handed it to me. I took a sip, the bubbles tickling my nose. As the waiter turned away, I saw him pause. He pulled a small phone from his pocket, angled it quickly, and my blood ran cold. He took our picture. Luca tensed, his hand tightened on my back. It's time to go. He did not cause a scene. He just moved. He guided me through the crowd, his body a shield, his pace fast and purposeful. We were out the door and in the back of his armored car in less than a minute. The ride home was silent. I was shaking. The opulence, the fake smiles, the feeling of being watched by predators like DeMarco. It was too much. That waiter, I started. He has been dealt with, Luca said. His face was granite. Dealt with? He works for DeMarco. He sent the photo to him. I did not know. I could not have known that the DeMarco spy had done more than that. He had also sent the photo to another number, a number given to him by a man he had met in a bar, a man named Mason Cole. When we got back to the estate, I did not go to my room. I followed Luca to his. The adrenaline was still thrumming through me. I was scared. I was vulnerable. The gala had ripped away the illusion of peace. It showed me the truth of his life. He was in his bedroom, standing by the glass wall, loosening his tie. "They're all your enemies," I said. My voice was small. "They are. They want to hurt you. They will try. And they'll use me," I whispered. "That's what Enzo thinks, isn't it? I'm your weakness." He turned. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping in front of me. He cupped my face, his hands hard and calloused against my skin. "Look at me." I met his gaze. "You are not my weakness," he said, his voice a low, fierce promise. "You are my strength. You are the reason I am doing this. Do you understand?" "I'm scared, Luca." "I know." His thumb stroked my cheekbones. "But you will never be scared again. Not like that. They will never touch you. Mason will never touch you. Nothing will touch you. Ever again. I swear it on my father's grave." His promise was so absolute, so final. It felt more binding than any law. The tension from the night, the fear, the predatory gaze of DeMarco, the electric intensity of Luca's vow. It all peaked. The air between us was so charged it was hard to breathe. I leaned up and kissed him. It was a desperate, clinging kiss. But he pulled back, gently. "Nina," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "Tonight was hard. You are afraid. I will not." "I'm not afraid," I cut him off. "Not of you, not anymore. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of hiding." I stepped back, breaking his hold. His hands fell to his sides. I looked at him, at this powerful, dangerous man who was being so careful with me. And I took control. "I don't want to hide anymore," I said. My voice was steady. I reached for his bow tie, my fingers, surprisingly, not shaking. I undid the knot. I unfastened the top button of his stark white shirt. He went perfectly still. His eyes were black, his breathing shallow. He was giving me the power. "Nina," he warned, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Then don't," he said. His voice was rough, a command. It was the permission I had been waiting for. My hands moved to the rest of his buttons. Pushing the stiff fabric aside, I spread my palms flat on his chest, over the scars, over his heart. It was hammering, a wild, frantic rhythm that matched my own. He did not move. He just watched me, his gaze burning. I pushed the tuxedo jacket off his shoulders. It pooled on the floor. I unbuttoned his shirt, pushing it open. I kissed the scar on his shoulder. I kissed the center of his chest. A shudder ran through him. "Nina," he gasped. "It's my turn," I whispered against his skin. "I'm not the girl you found in the alley. I'm not broken, and I am not afraid." I took his hand and led him to the bed. I pushed him, and he went, sitting on the edge, watching me with a raw, undisguised hunger that made me feel powerful. I undid my hair, letting the pins fall, shaking it loose over my shoulders. I reached behind me, found the zipper of the silk dress. I pulled it down. The dress slid off my body, puddling at my feet like a pool of black water. I stood before him, wearing nothing but the moonlight from the window. He made a sound, a low, pained groan. He held out his hand. "Come here," he commanded. I trusted him. I trusted him completely. He pulled me onto his lap, his arms wrapping around me like steel bands, crushing me against his bare chest. His mouth found mine. This was not the careful kiss from the library. This was not the gentle reassurance from moments before. This was a raw, consuming fire. He was done waiting. He was done being careful. And I was done being scared. I met his kiss with my own fire. I demanded as much as I gave. My hands were in his hair, on his face, learning the hard, strong lines of him. His hands were everywhere. They were on my back, in my hair, on my hips, pulling me closer, as if he could absorb me into his own skin. It was not gentle. It was not slow. It was intense, and it was desperate. It was a claim. He was claiming me, and I was claiming him. We were two survivors, two quiet people, finally making a sound. It was the sound of a promise being sealed. It was the sound of two halves becoming whole. The next morning, I woke up wrapped in his arms. The sun was streaming in. I felt peaceful, whole. I had never woken up like this before. Luca was still asleep, his face turned toward me, his breathing deep and even. I traced the scar on his jaw, and he did not stir. I slipped out of bed, put on his shirt from last night, and padded out of the room. The house was quiet. I felt, for the first time, like I truly belonged here. I went to the kitchen, craving coffee. Antonio and Enzo were there, standing by the counter, speaking in low, urgent tones. They stopped when they saw me. "Signorina," Antonio said, his face, as always, unreadable. "Good morning, Antonio, Enzo." I smiled. I felt good. Enzo just nodded, his eyes cold. He did not approve of me. I went to the coffee maker. "The boss is still sleeping," Antonio said. "It's okay, I'm just getting coffee." I heard Enzo mutter something in Italian to Antonio. Antonio responded, his voice a low rumble. And I heard my name, and another name. "Mason Cole." I froze, my hand on the coffee pot. I turned around. What did you just say?" Antonio looked pained. Enzo looked angry. "Signorina, it is nothing," Antonio said. "Don't lie to me." My voice was sharp, all the newfound confidence turning to ice. "You said Mason Cole. What about him?" Enzo stepped forward. "It is business, Signorina, not for you." "The hell it isn't," I snapped, shocking him and myself. "That man is my business. What happened?" Antonio looked at Enzo, who gave a sharp shake of his head, but Antonio looked back at me. He had been the one to let me in. He had been the one to bring me to Luca. "He hired someone," Antonio said, his voice flat, "to find you. He took a picture. We found the man. We took care of the situation." My blood ran cold. The man I had felt, the watching. It had been real. "He found me? He knows I'm here?" "No," Antonio said. "The man we found had not reported back to him." "When?" I demanded. "When did this happen?" Antonio hesitated. "Yesterday morning." "Yesterday, before the gala, before Luca had come to my room, before he had promised me I was safe. He had known. He had known Mason was still hunting me, and he had not told me." I dropped the coffee pot. It did not shatter, but coffee splashed across the clean white tile. I did not care. I turned and ran from the kitchen. "Nina," Antonio called. I found Luca in his study. He was dressed, on the phone, the black phone. He looked up, surprised. When I slammed the door open, he ended the call instantly. "Nina, what's wrong?" "You lied to me," I whispered. My whole body was shaking. His face went still. "What are you talking about?" "Mason, you knew he hired someone. You knew he was still looking for me. You knew yesterday, and you did not tell me." "Nina," he said, standing up, his voice calm, "I protected you. The threat is gone. It is handled." "You lied!" I screamed. The word echoed in the big room. You promised you would never lie to me in the gun room. You said that was the one thing you would never do." "I did not lie," he said, his voice hard. "I protected your peace. What was the point in telling you to make you afraid again, to ruin the night? It was over. He's not a threat." "That wasn't your choice to make." I was crying now, the hot, angry tears of betrayal. "You treated me like I'm still that broken, fragile thing. I told you I trusted you. Last night, and you didn't trust me back. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." "This is my world," he said, his voice rising for the first time. "In my world, we do not burden the people we protect with the details of that protection. We just protect. I did my job. I'm not one of your people," I choked. "I'm not just something you protect. I thought I was..." I could not finish. I could not say what I thought I was to him. This is just another cage, isn't it? I said, my voice dead. A prettier one, with softer sheets, but it's the same. You make the decisions. You tell me what I'm allowed to know. You're just like him. His face went white. The color drained from it, leaving him looking like the marble statues in the museum. He looked like I had struck him. Do not, he said, his voice a lethal whisper. Never say that again. It's true. I backed away. I need air. I need to think. You are not leaving this estate. It was an order. I am. I walked to the door. I'm not safe here. Not from this. I ran down the hall. I heard him call my name, but he did not follow. I got to the front door. Antonio was there, blocking my path. Signorina, please, do not be foolish. It is dangerous. Let me out, Antonio, or I swear to God, I will walk, and I will keep walking until I am out of these gates. Let me go. He looked at me, his gaze full of pity. He spoke into the small radio on his lapel. Boss? There was a long silence. I could hear the static. Then Luca's voice, dead and empty. Let her go. Antonio stepped aside. He opened the front door. I walked out into the bright, clear morning. I walked down the long, cypress-lined drive. The massive iron gates, the ones I had entered as a refugee, slid open. I walked through them, and I did not look back. The world outside the gates was too loud. I had forgotten the sound of traffic, of people yelling into phones, of sirens in the distance. It was a dull, gray roar that scraped against my nerves. I walked for what felt like miles, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. He had lied. He had known Mason was still hunting me, and he had looked me in the eye, taken me to that gala, and held me all night, all while keeping that secret. He had promised me truth, and in the first real test, he had given me protection instead. He did not see that for me. They were now the same as lies. He had treated me like a fragile, stupid child. I took a cab. I gave the driver the address of my old neighborhood, the $20 bill I had stuffed in my jeans pocket, feeling thin and useless. The driver's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. I was a woman in expensive jeans and a simple, perfectly cut t-shirt, clothes Luca had bought me, getting dropped off on a street where the buildings were crumbling and the gutters were full of trash. He did not say anything. I walked the last 2 blocks. My old life, it smelled like stale grease, exhaust, and desperation. I felt alien. I did not belong here anymore, but I did not belong in Luca's fortress either. I was a ghost, trapped between 2 worlds. I needed a family. My sister, Chloe, lived 4 blocks over, in a building just as run down as my old one. We had not spoken in 6 months, not since I had refused, for the 10th time, to leave Mason. I can't watch it anymore. Nina, she had said, her voice flat, call me when you're finally done. I was done, but what had I run to? I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, the smell of boiled cabbage and cat urine thick in the air. I knocked on her door, number 3B. The peephole went dark, a long silence. Then the sound of 3 deadbolts being undone. The door opened a crack. Chloe stared at me. She was older than me by 2 years, but she looked older by 10. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing a faded nursing scrub top. Nina? Her voice was a shocked whisper. Then her eyes hardened. Oh my God, he did it, didn't he? He finally... No, I said quickly. No, Chloe, I left him. I left him weeks ago. She opened the door wider, her eyes sweeping over me. She saw the clothes, the clear skin, the way I was standing, not hunched over, not flinching. You look... She shook her head. You look... good. Where the hell have you been? I went by your apartment. It was empty. The landlord said... He said you were just gone. It's complicated. I stepped inside. Her apartment was tiny, cramped, but clean. I met someone after I left Mason. Chloe leaned against the door, crossing her arms. You met someone? Of course you did. And let me guess, he's what? Rich, powerful? Is that where you got the clothes? And now you're here? So you ran from him too? The truth of it, so simple and so ugly, hit me. Yes, I whispered. Jesus, Nina! She walked to her tiny kitchen, filled a kettle, and slammed it on the stove. You always pick them, don't you? You run from one fire straight into another. He's not like Mason, I insisted, my voice weak. He's quiet, and he protected me. Mason came back. He broke into my apartment. This new man, he took me in. He kept me safe. Then why are you here? She asked, her back to me. Because he lied to me, I choked out. He promised he would never lie, but he found out Mason was still looking for me, and he didn't tell me. He handled it like I was a child, like I couldn't be trusted with the truth. He protected you, Chloe said, turning. He kept the monster away from you. And you're mad at him? What is wrong with you? That's what a man is supposed to do. No, I said, louder than I intended. He's supposed to be honest. He's supposed to trust me. How is it any different? Mason controlled me to keep me weak. Luca, he controls me to keep me safe. It's the same thing. It's still a cage. I sank onto her lumpy couch. I'm so lost. Chloe, I don't fit there. I don't fit here. I ran away from him, but I have nowhere to go. Chloe looked at me, her hard expression softening. She sat beside me. You're not lost, Nina. You're just free. It's new. It's scary. You can stay here as long as you need. We'll figure it out. I leaned my head on her shoulder, and for the first time in my life, I felt a small, fragile flicker of hope. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I did not need a protector. Maybe all I needed was myself. I stayed for an hour. We drank tea. I told her. Not everything. I did not tell her his name was Luca Romano. I did not tell her about the guns. I just told her he was a powerful man. She told me she was working a double at the hospital tonight. You can stay, she said again. I have to go. Just lock the door. Lock all of them. No, I said. I can't hide here. It's not fair to you. I needed to see you. I left her apartment, walking back out into the noise of the late afternoon. I felt better. I felt stronger. I had my sister back. I was not alone. I was so lost in my own thoughts. I did not notice the battered red truck parked across the street. I did not see the man in the driver's seat. I did not see the photo he was holding, the one from the gala, me in a black silk dress, my hand on Luca's arm. Princess, Mason snarled under his breath. I walked toward the main boulevard, my head down, trying to figure out where to go. A shelter, a hotel? The truck's engine roared to life. It screeched in a U-turn, tires smoking, and mounted the curb, blocking my path. I froze. The door flew open. It was not Mason. It was a man I did not know, with dead eyes and a spiderweb tattoo on his neck. But then Mason got out of the passenger side. He was not the man I remembered. He was not drunk. He was not raging. He was thin. His eyes sunken, his face tight with a desperate, focused hatred. This was worse. This was a man with nothing left to lose. Nina, he said. His voice was a dry rasp. I took a step back. Mason, leave me alone. Leave you alone? He laughed, a short, ugly sound. You ruined me. My job, my apartment, my whole life. Gone. All because you couldn't just be good. You had to go run off with him. He held up the photo. My blood turned to ice. How did you get that? The world's a small place, Nina. You look real pretty, like a queen, but you're not. You're just my problem, and I'm going to fix my problem. He lunged. I screamed and tried to run, but the other man was on me. He grabbed my arms, pinning them. Mason walked up to me, his face inches from mine. He smelled like sour sweat and metal. You're coming with me, he whispered. We're going to have a long talk. He hit me. A sharp, bright explosion of pain at my temple. My vision blurred. My knees buckled. The world went dark. Luca's study was silent. He had not moved in an hour. He sat at his desk, staring at the black phone. He had let her go. He had heard the terror in her voice, the accusation, "You're just like him." It was the only blow that had ever truly wounded him. He had done it wrong. He knew it. He saw her as something to be protected, a rare, clean thing in his world of blood, but he had forgotten she was not a thing. She was a woman who had survived. He should have told her. He should have trusted her. He picked up the phone. He buzzed Antonio. "What is her status?" "She went to her sister's. Boss, apartment 3B. She's been inside for..." There was a pause. "Wait. She's on the move. She just left the building. She's walking south on 3rd Street. "Good," Luca said. "Keep the tail on her. Do not let her out of your sight, but give her space. Let her breathe." He hung up. He would give her the afternoon. He would let her see that the world outside was not safe. He would let her be scared. And then, tonight, he would go to her. He would get on his knees. And he would apologize. The black phone rang. It was not his private line. It was the line from his main security. He snatched it up. "What?" It was Enzo. His voice was tight, breathless. "Boss, the tail. They're down." "What do you mean, down?" "A truck. Red Ford. It ambushed them. T-boned the car. My men they're not responding. And Boss, she's gone. He took her." The room went cold. Luca stood up. He did not speak. "Boss?" Enzo's voice was tinny, scared. "We have the truck on a traffic cam. It's him. It's Mason Cole. And we just got a call from Ricardo DeMarco. He's laughing. He says to tell you, what's lost is lost." Luca put the phone down. He did not slam it. He placed it gently in its cradle. He stood in the center of the room for 1, 2, 3 seconds. He was perfectly still. Then, with a roar that was not human, he swept his arm across the desk, the lamp, the computer, the stacks of paper. Everything went flying, shattering against the wall. He walked to the interim. He pressed the button. "Enzo, Antonio, my study. Now." The 2 men were there in less than a minute. They had never seen him like this. His face was white. His eyes were not angry. They were dead. It was terrifying. "Find her," he said. His voice was a whisper. "Boss, we're trying..." Enzo started. "You are not trying. You are finding. Get me every caporregime in this family. Get me every man on my payroll. Get me every lowlife and informant we own. I want every single warehouse, every abandoned building, every rat hole in this city searched. From the cliffs to the docks, I want every man the DeMarcos have ever spoken to dragged out of his bed. I want Ricardo DeMarco's house, his business, his mistress's apartments. I want them all turned upside down. I want the city to stop breathing until she is back." He looked at Enzo. "Call in every favor, the police, the city council, the unions. Tell them if she is not back, safe, in my home, by midnight. The agreements are off." "Boss," Antonio said, his voice grave, That's war." Luca looked at him. "If he has hurt her, if her pulse is not perfect, if she has one, single, new bruise on her skin, I am not starting a war, Antonio." He paused, his voice dropping to a frozen, lethal calm. "I'm burning the entire city to the ground, and I will salt the earth when I am done." I woke to the smell of rust and cold water. My head throbbed, a dull, sickening ache. I was in a chair. My hands were tied behind me, my ankles tied to the chair legs. The rope was rough, cutting into my wrists. I was in a warehouse. It was huge, dark and empty. Save for stacks of rotting pallets and old oil drums, a single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a weak, yellow circle of light. Mason was sitting on a crate, 10 feet away, drinking from a bottle of whiskey. The old terror, the familiar, paralyzing fear washed over me. I was back. I was trapped. "Look who's awake," he sneered, He took a long swallow. "Welcome home, Nina. I missed you." "Mason," I whispered, "please, let me go. You can have anything. He'll give you money." "Money?" He laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "It ain't about money. You think this is about money? This is about respect. You took mine. You... He stood, pacing, his movements jerky. "I had a life. I had a job. It was good. And then you leave. And this ghost? He takes everything, my job, my apartment, my friends, and they're all scared of him, scared of me." He kicked a metal drum, the boom echoing in the vast space. "You did this. You ruined me." "I didn't do anything. Mason, I just left." "You left?" He spun on me, his eyes wide and red. "You don't leave me. I am the one who says when we're done." He stormed over, grabbing my chin, forcing my head up, his thumb pressed into the bruise he had left. I winced. "See? That's what you are. You're something I touch. You're something I say. You're mine." He raised his other hand, the old, familiar gesture. I flinched, squeezing my eyes shut. But the blow did not come. I opened my eyes. He was breathing hard, his hand still raised. And I was not the same. The fear was there. It was cold and heavy in my stomach, but something else was there, too. Luca's voice. "You saved yourself. Nina, I just opened the door. You are not my weakness. You are my strength." I was not the girl from the diner. I was not the girl who cowered. I looked him in the eye. My body was trembling, but my voice was cold. "You hit me, Mason, and he will kill you. Slowly." His hand wavered. You think he's coming? He doesn't know. Nobody knows." "He knows," I said. "He always knows." I needed to keep him talking. My hands, they were tied, but on my left wrist, under the ropes, the bracelet. He had given it to me after the storm, for peace of mind. He had said, a simple silver chain with a single, flat, circular charm. I had thought it was just a gift, but I remembered his words as he fastened it. "If you are ever in a place where you cannot call, press this. Hold it for 3 seconds. I will find you." Mason was ranting again. "He's not coming. He let you go. I saw you. You walked right out. He's done with you." "You're right, Mason," I said, my voice softening. I let the tears come. This was the acting I had learned, the survival. "You're right. He lied to me. I was so stupid. Please, Mason, I'll come back. I'll do whatever you want. Please." His face, so full of rage, softened into a cruel, smug smile. "That's my girl. See? You just needed to be reminded." He turned his back, walking to the crate to get his whiskey. I worked my fingers, my hands screaming in protest as I pushed against the ropes. I got my thumb onto the charm. It was flat, smooth. I pressed. I held. 1, 2, 3. There was no sound, no light, nothing. Mason turned back. "Now, we're going to wait. Your friend. He's going to pay. He's going to pay for what he did to me. And then I'm going to take you so far away he'll never find you." Suddenly, every light in the warehouse went out. We were plunged into absolute, terrifying darkness. "What the—" Mason's voice was sharp with panic. "Who's there?" Silence. And then, from every direction at once, a sound, the heavy, metallic shh of tactical boots on concrete. The main bay door, 100 feet away, exploded. Not with a sound, it just dissolved, a controlled charge. Floodlights, white and blinding, lit the space, turning the darkness into day. Mason screamed, "Ma!" shielding his eyes. "Who are you?" Men were dropping from the rafters, black shapes, silent. They landed, took positions. There were 3 other men in the warehouse, Mason's friends huddled in a corner. They raised their guns. Pop, pop, pop. Silence shots. The 3 men crumpled. It was not a fight. It was an execution. It was surgical. And then he walked through the blown-out doorway. Luca? He was not in a suit. He was in black tactical gear, body armor, a rifle in his hands. He looked like the god of death. Antonio and Enzo flanked him. His eyes found me. They were flat, black, and murderous. Then they moved to Mason. Mason, in a blind panic, grabbed me. He pulled a knife from his boot and yanked me from the chair, cutting the ropes. He dragged me up, holding me as a shield. The blade pressed hard against my throat. "Stay back!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "I'll kill her. I swear to God, I'll cut her throat. Stay back!" Luca did not stop. He just walked. Calmly, slowly, his rifle was down. He did not even look concerned. "Let her go, Mason," Luca said. His voice was not a shout. It was a calm, reasonable statement. It was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. "No, you stay back. You ruined me." "I did," Luca agreed. "And now you are touching what is mine." I looked at Luca. His eyes met mine. He was not looking at Mason. He was looking at me. And in his eyes, I saw the promise. I am here. I was not a shield. I stomped my heel, the one I had used on the fire escape, onto Mason's instep, grinding down with all my weight. He roared in pain. His grip loosened, the knife pulling away from my throat for a fraction of a second. I rammed my head backward, smashing my skull into his face. I felt his nose break. He bellowed, stumbling, pushing me away. Crack! The sound was deafening. It was not a silenced pop. It was a thunderclap. Luca's rifle was up. Mason screamed, a high, thin sound, and collapsed, clutching his shoulder. The knife clattered to the floor. The shot had been perfect. Before Mason's body had even settled, Luca was on me. He grabbed me, pulling me behind him, shielding me with his own body. He cut the bonds on my wrists. The adrenaline, the fear, the fight, it all left me at once. I collapsed against him, my body shaking so violently I could not stand. I buried my face in his chest, and I sobbed. "I'm sorry," I cried, my voice muffled. "I'm sorry, I thought I was stronger now. But I was so scared." His arms crushed me to him. He was trembling. The cold, precise killer was gone, and this was just Luca, holding me like I was the only thing in the world. He buried his face in my hair. "Shh," he whispered, his voice rough. "You are strong. You fought him." He pulled my face up, his hands cupping my cheeks. His eyes were no longer dead. They were full of a fierce, desperate light. "Nina, you called me. You called me Mia Cara. That is strength. You called for backup." He kissed my forehead. He kissed my hair. He stood up, pulling me with him. He looked at Mason, who was whimpering on the floor, clutching his ruined shoulder. Antonio and Enzo stood over him. Luca drew a small, compact pistol from his hip, the same one he had given me in the alley. He walked over to Mason. He pressed the barrel of the gun to Mason's forehead. "He'll never hurt you again," he said, his voice flat. He looked at me. He was giving me the choice. I looked at Mason, in the blood, at the tears and snot running down his face. He was not a monster. He was just a pathetic, weak man. All my fear, it was gone. All I felt was pity and disgust. "No," I said. Luca paused. "He deserves to die." "I know." I walked forward, stopping just out of Mason's reach. I looked down at the man who had owned my life for 3 years. Death is what he wants. It's an escape. It's too easy. I met Luca's eyes. My voice was clear. It did not shake. "I want him to live. I want him to sit in a dark, cold cell for the rest of his life. I want him to wake up every single morning and remember this. I want him to live, knowing he never, ever broke me." Luca stared at me, the look in his eyes. It was not just love. It was awe. He nodded, a single, slow gesture. He lowered the gun. He turned his back on Mason. "Antonio," he said, "make the call. Anonymous tip. An armed robbery gone wrong. Make sure the responding officers are not his friends. I want him processed. I want him to be a number, and then I want him to disappear into the system forever." Yes, boss. Luca put his arm around my waist, pulling me tight against his side. He did not look at Mason again. He just walked me away. He walked me out of the warehouse, out of the darkness, and into the flashing red and blue lights of the sirens he had called. He opened the door to his car. "It's over, Nina," he said. "It's over." 6 weeks. That is how long it had been since the warehouse. 6 weeks since the world had shifted, cracked open, and settled into a new reality. The silence of the estate was no longer a quiet I was visiting. It was the sound of my life. I woke to the sound of the ocean, not the memory of Mason's voice. I no longer lived in the guest wing. I lived in Luca's room. My books were on his shelves, my clothes in his closet. I was no longer a guest. I was home. My days had found a new rhythm. 3 times a week, I drove into Castello Bay, not to the diner, but to a small, bright studio space in a building that Romano Investments had quietly purchased. I had started an art program. It was a small thing, just a free, open studio for women, women from shelters, women in halfway houses, women who still had the haunted, hollow look I remembered seeing in my own mirror. We did not talk about our pasts, not unless we wanted to. We just painted, we drew, we worked with clay, we made things. We took the ugly, broken pieces of our lives and made something new. It was the hardest, best thing I had ever done. Luca was still healing. In the chaos of the rescue, one of Mason's men, before he was taken down, had fired a wild shot. It had been a lucky hit, a bullet grazing Luca's ribs, slipping under the edge of his body armor. He had ignored it. Of course. The adrenaline had masked it. By the time we were home and the police had taken Mason away, Luca had been pale, his black shirt soaked through on one side. Now, he was the worst patient in the world. "Sit still," I ordered. "It is fine," he grumbled. He was sitting on the edge of our bed, shirtless. The wound was a long, angry red line along his side, healing but still tender. "It is not fine. You pulled the stitches yesterday moving that desk." I dabbed the antiseptic on the cloth, ignoring his wince. "You are supposed to be resting." "I do not rest." "You do now, or I will have Antonio hide your shoes." His head snapped up. He looked at me, a flicker of something, not anger but surprise, in his eyes. And then it happened. The thing that still made my heart stop. He smiled. It was not the small, rare quirk of his lips I had come to know. It was a real, actual smile that lit up his eyes and changed his entire face. He looked young. He looked happy. He caught my hand, the one holding the cloth, and pulled me closer. I stumbled, half falling onto his lap. "You would," he whispered, his voice rough. "You would be the one to order my men against me." "Only for your own good," I said, my voice suddenly breathless. He was too close. Even after all this time, he still stole the air from my lungs. "You are my good," he said, and he kissed me. It was slow and deep, and it tasted like coffee in the morning. The old fear was just gone. It was a scar, like his, but it no longer hurt to the touch. It was just a part of me, a reminder of what I had survived. I was in the library a few days later, sketching. I was not very good, but I loved the feel of the pencil on the thick paper. I was trying to draw the massive, ancient cypress tree outside the window. The door opened. I looked up, expecting Luca, but it was Enzo. My stomach gave a faint, old flutter of insecurity. Enzo. Luca's second had never hidden his disapproval. He saw me as the civilian, the liability, the woman who had made his boss soft. He did not walk in. He just stood in the doorway, his hands clasped behind his back. He looked uncomfortable, like his perfect suit was too tight. "Signorina," he said with a stiff nod. "Enzo, do you need something?" He cleared his throat. "I came to apologize." I put my sketchbook down. "For what?" "When you first arrived, I questioned the boss's judgment. You called me his weakness, I said, not unkindly. Enzo winced. I did. I told him you were a distraction, that you made him weak. He stepped into the room. I have worked for Luca Romano for 10 years. Since his father died, I have seen him take this family from a simple, provincial organization to an empire. I have seen him in gunfights. I have seen him negotiate with men who would kill him for $1. I have seen him cold. I have seen him ruthless. I have seen him angry. He stopped in front of the desk, looking at me. But in 10 years, I never saw him smile, not once. Not a real one. My breath caught. I was wrong, Signorina, he said. You are not his weakness. You are his gravity. You are the thing that keeps him human. He gave another stiff bow. He's only ever truly smiled like that with you. For that, we are all in your debt. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone with the silent, towering shelves of books and the echo of his words. That weekend, Luca took me to the beach. It was not a public place. It was a private, hidden cove, accessible only by a winding stone staircase carved into the cliffs below the estate. The sand was white, the water a fierce, cold blue. We were the only 2 people for miles. We walked along the surf, barefoot, our jeans rolled up, the wind was cool. Whipping my hair across my face, I felt free. Not just safe, but truly, completely free. I have something for you, he said. He stopped, turning to face me. He reached into his pocket. My heart did not pound. I was not afraid. I was just curious. He opened his hand. It was the gun. My breath hitched, the small, compact, terrifying black pistol he had given me in the alley. Luca, look closer, he said. I did. It was different. It was lighter. The trigger was gone, the barrel was sealed, it was just the shell, and there was a small silver loop affixed to the back. It is hollow, he said. He picked it up. It was attached to a simple, heavy silver chain. It was a necklace, a pendant. I told you, he said, his voice soft, that you would never need to use it. He undid the clasp and moved behind me. I lifted my hair. His fingers, calloused and warm, brushed my neck as he fastened it. The metal was cold against my skin, resting heavy against my breastbone. It was a promise he had kept. I turned to face him, my hands coming up to rest on his chest. I looked at the dark, strange, beautiful piece of metal. My fear, my power, my past, now just a harmless, hollow piece of jewelry. I kept the key, too, I whispered. I pulled a thin leather cord from under my shirt. On it was the old silver key to his estate, the one he had given me with the gun. I had worn it every day. A slow, possessive smile spread across his face. He looked at the key resting near the gun. I know, he said. I stood on my toes and kissed him. There was no fear. There was no desperation. There was no pain. It was just me and him. The wind and the salt and the sun. It was a kiss of absolute certainty. It was the kiss of a woman who knew she was loved and who knew she was home. That night, we sat by the fire in the library. He was in his usual chair, reading a thick book on Renaissance architecture. I was curled on the rug, my head resting on his knee, my sketchbook in my lap. I was not drawing the trees. I was drawing his hand, the long, strong fingers, the scars, the way he held the book. It was so domestic, so normal. He put the book down, his hand stroking my hair. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "About how quiet it is," I whispered. "About how I used to think quiet was just the absence of noise. But this is different. This is full." He slid from the chair, coming down to the rug with me. He lay on his side, propped on an elbow, looking at me. The firelight played over his face, softening the hard lines. "I am not a good man, Nina," he whispered. It was the thing he always came back to. "I know," I said. I touched his face, my fingers tracing the scar on his jaw. I am not a good man. I have done terrible things. I know that, too. But I have never, he said, his voice thick, lied to you. Not since that day. And I will never lie to you again. You are the one true thing in my life. And you are mine, I said. He leaned in, his mouth finding mine. This, too, was different. It was not the desperate, healing kiss of our first time. It was not the hungry, claiming kiss after the gala. This was a kiss of permanence. His hands were not healing. They were home. They moved over my back, my sides, with a slow, languid confidence. He knew me. He knew every part of me. I arched into his touch, my body feeling heavy, safe, and entirely his. His lips left mine, tracing a line down my throat to the hollow of my collarbone, to the silver gun pendant resting there. Mine, he whispered against my skin. He pulled the soft knit sweater I was wearing over my head, his eyes, dark in the firelight, full of a deep, profound adoration. He was not looking at my body. He was looking at me. I love you, I whispered. The words were not heavy. They were as light as air. C'est la mia vita, he breathed. You are my life. He loved me slowly, with a patience that was a universe away from the brutal, surgical precision he used in his other life. In this room, with me. He was not a boss. He was not a killer. He was just Luca. And he was mine. There was no desperation. There was no fear. There was no past. There was only the warmth of the fire, the weight of his body, and the deep, unshakable knowledge that this was not a moment. This was the rest of my life. The news came 2 days later. We were in the kitchen, sunlight streaming in, sharing the morning paper over coffee. His section was business. Mine was the local news. And there it was, a small article on page 3. Local man sentenced in brutal kidnapping case. My hand did not even shake. I read the words, Mason Cole sentenced to 25 years to life. The article detailed how, during his arrest, evidence had come to light linking him to 2 other assaults and a string of charges that the police, due to new evidence, were now pursuing. His old friends on the force were not mentioned. They were, I was sure, gone. It was over, and he was a name on a piece of paper, a number in a system. He was gone. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since the day I met him, a final, complete exhalation. Luca's hand covered mine. He had been watching me read. He did not say a word. He did not say, I did that. He did not say, I told you. He just held my hand. I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers with his. It's a beautiful day, I said. I think I'll go to the diner. He looked up, a question in his eyes. I need to do one last thing. I said, for me. He nodded. Antonio will drive you. No, I said. He paused. I'll drive myself, I said. I'm not afraid. He studied me for a long moment, then he nodded again. That slow, respecting gesture. Take the sedan and... He smiled. Do not speed. The diner was exactly the same. The same cracked bell jingled when I opened the door. The same smell of stale coffee and hot grease. Sal was at the grill, his back to me. Be right with you, he grunted. Take your time, Sal, I said. He froze. He turned around, his spatula in his hand, his jaw dropped. Nina, Holy, we thought you were dead. We heard, with Mason, I'm not dead, Sal. I said. I smiled. It was a real smile. Confidence, calm. I'm just done. I walked to the counter and untied the knot on the clean, white apron he had left hanging on the hook. My old apron. I folded it neatly and placed it on the counter. I'm here to quit, Sal, in person. Nina, are you okay? Do you need money? I don't, but thank you for everything. I turned and walked out. The bell jingled. I stepped out into the bright sunshine, took a deep breath of the city air. It smelled clean. I got into the sleek black sedan and I drove home. I found him in the garden. It was late afternoon. The sun was warm, turning the roses a deep, velvety red. He was sitting on the stone bench, not reading, just watching the ocean. I sat down next to him. I opened my sketchbook, the one I had left on the bench. I had been working on a drawing of the roses. He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached over, his hand covering mine, his fingers resting over my knuckles on the open page. His warmth seeped into me. "I was thinking today," I said, my voice soft. "Back in the alley, the night we met." He turned his head, his dark eyes watching me. "I was so desperate. I was so thirsty. I asked you for a glass of water." I looked up from our hands, meeting his gaze, "and you gave me everything." He was silent for a moment. His thumb stroked the back of my hand. "No," he said, his voice a low, soft rumble. "You were dying of thirst. I offered you water." He touched the key, the one that hung around my neck. "But you took the key. You took the house. You took my protection." He smiled, that rare, breathtaking smile that was only for me. "You took it, Nina," he said. "That's what made you mine." Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please drop a comment and say hello. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more, and please share your thoughts about Nina and Luca's journey in English.